hope that you know that I take very seriously every week when I have the privilege of standing here before you with the job I've been given to bring a word from the Lord. Keith, I'm sure, can resonate with this. It is in some ways an odd job. A sometimes wonderfully odd job, and other times a painfully odd job. When I was early in my call to ministry, I had more than one person suggest to me that if I could possibly do anything else besides preach and lead a church, do it. And all of those people who said that were ministers. It is an odd job to think that one could speak a word from the Lord. The job is in some ways even odder when it's done in front of people that you know very well. People like your spouse, or your children, or your grandchildren. One Sunday morning several years back, Jean and our granddaughter Olivia and I were on our way to church. I had just bought a new car. Imagine that, huh? And I was so proud of it. We went out to get into the car, and our outside cat, who loved to walk with her dirty paw prints all over the car, had not only walked on the car, but she had thrown up on the car from the windshield all the way down the hood. And in my anger, I got into the car and I said, I wish that cat would just go ahead and die. To which Olivia, who was 7 years old at the time, said, with tears in her eyes, Diego, don't say that. And I thought to myself, now how in the world am I going to go deliver the word of the Lord? But even odder than preaching before your spouse and your children and grandchildren is to stand before someone who brought you into this world and speak a word from the Lord. The one who has known me even before I entered this world, through diaper changes and all the other parts of parenting. But I'm so blessed to have my mom. Of the many things I'm grateful to my parents for is to have been raised going to church. Were you raised going to church? In the 5th grade, our Sunday school teacher, Mrs. Struby, challenged us to learn and memorize the names of the 66 books of the Bible. Anybody ever done that? Mm-hmm. And to do them in order. Mm-hmm. I don't remember now what the prize was for this achievement, but it was good enough that all 7 of us 10 or 11-year-olds made the goal line and we earned the prize. Now, I would hate to admit to Mrs. Struby today, God rest her soul, that I could not stand up here today and recite the 66 books of the Bible the way I did that morning in her class. Anyone want to give a shot at it? People who study with a degree of seriousness the Bible and its origins, the way the book that we have today came into being, tell us that the scripture that Kylie read for us this morning is actually the oldest words in the New Testament. Paul's first letter to the church of Thessalonica was written sometime around the year 50 A.D. It is our oldest New Testament scripture. The first gospel that was penned, which scholars believe to be the Gospel of Mark, actually was not compiled until around 80 A.D., some 30 years after Paul wrote this letter. And so, if we had the books of the New Testament in chronological order, in terms of the date of authorship, this book, this chapter, would be the very beginning of the New Testament. Now, we've all heard how important beginnings and endings are. I had a preaching instructor who once said, make sure your sermon always has an attention-catching beginning and a compelling ending, and your congregation will forgive you for everything in the middle. Paul didn't know it at the time, but these loving words that he penned to a group of people with whom he felt an endearing relationship are the start of this good news that we know to be the New Testament. This is where it begins. Our history, our heritage, our roots are right here in the words of Paul. One of the things I like to ask couples, married couples, is, how did you meet? How did you meet? I love to hear the stories about how folks got together. What initiated this relationship? How did it start? For those of you who were ever married or ever spent some time with someone really special, do you remember? Do you remember that first meeting? That first conversation? For Gene and I, it was in a Sunday school class at Riverland Hills Baptist Church in Columbia. I turned to this woman on my right and I said, "Hello, my name is Kurt Stutler." And she said, "I'm Gene Powell." And I said, "Oh, do you have a son by the name of David?" And Gene said somewhat hesitantly, "Well, that depends." Why do you ask? I told her that David was my buddy. I was helping out with the children's choir, and he was my buddy. I may not have known it then, but I was hooked that day by a woman with a sense of humor and an authenticity that said, "I'm not a perfect mom with perfect children, but I love them anyway." Those first impressions are important, even if they are subject to change. I don't know how many times I've heard from couples, "Oh, when I first met him, I thought he was a jerk." Or, "The first time I saw her, I said to myself, what a snob." But something in that meeting led to a second look. It may seem a little odd that the first historical impression ever recorded about the Church of Jesus Christ is the opening to this letter. But we've learned over time how significant letters can be. I worry a little bit that the art of letter writing seems to be dying out. I'm just not sure that emails and Facebook posts and tweets can ever have the enduring, profound impact that a letter can have. Paul never dreamed, nor did the people of Thessalonica dream, that this letter that he would give to them would be read. For centuries and centuries thereafter, including read right here today and across the world in gatherings of God's people, that this is where it would begin. If we believe that the book, the Bible, is a work of the Holy Spirit, do you believe that? that God had a big hand in making this book what it is for us today, if that's our conviction, then perhaps what Paul has to say, the content of this opening salutation, is important to our understanding of just who is God and who are we and what are we to be in relationship to God. We might first want to look at who were the Thessalonians. The city of Thessalonica was strategically located at the crossroads of east and west, north and south. It was one of the major seaports in the world at the time of Paul's visit. The city was prosperous. It was a thriving metropolis. Even today, the modern city of Thessalonica is the second largest city in modern Greece. As well as being prosperous and cosmopolitan, Thessalonica was a religious mix with its citizens involved in a multitude of religious organizations, cults, and worships of various deities. And most of the people who made up the early Thessalonian church had turned away from their worship of those deities. Now, it's difficult for us to grasp today just how radical this response to the gospel of Christ was. You see, most people in Paul's world who worshiped the available gods simply added new deities to their repertoire when it suited them. It was no great thing to simply add another god to the list of those that appealed to their needs. It was kind of a religious form of the more the merrier. One commentator on this passage said, when the believers in Thessalonica first heard the good news that Paul brought to them, they made this radical commitment of their lives to Jesus Christ and turned away from all other religious persuasions and practices. And Paul praised them with these words, "You turn to God from idols." They did not simply add Jesus Christ to their list of household gods. They completely turned away from one way of living and worshiping to another way. And it cost them. Another commentator said about them, the Thessalonians were a model to all the believers in the surrounding area. Their work was produced by faith, their labor was prompted by love, and their endurance was inspired by hope in our Lord Jesus Christ. And in these very first words of the New Testament, we learn where it all started, where it began. We're drawn back to the basics of what it means to be in relationship with God through Christ. You know, life has a way of overloading us and drawing us out of focus, making us focus on the least important instead of the most important. One of the character flaws that is so frequently found in most of us is this tendency we have to, as the author said, sweat the small stuff and ignore the big stuff. In Paul's opening words to a church of people that he dearly loved, we are reminded of what truly matters. What matters today in our lives, in our world. A world where we're so easily and frequently distracted. Paul may not have known, but Paul starts us out with his focus being gratitude. We talk a lot about gratitude around here every Thursday. What's Thursdays around here? Thankful Thursday. A while back I got an email that included this thought-provoking question. If you woke up today with only the things left in your life that you have thanked God for yesterday, what would you have? If we be honest, most of us don't have the time to be grateful, do we? We don't have the time to be in an attitude of thanksgiving to God and one another because, you see, we're busy. We're busy worrying about what we don't have or griping about what we feel like we've been denied. or jealous over what we think others have over us. And when we do that, we can't be grateful. The first place that Paul takes the Thessalonians in his letter, and the very first place he takes us in the New Testament, in the gospel, is to thanksgiving, to offering thanks. Maybe we ought to consider who we need to thank this morning and try it. It seems to work for Paul and the Thessalonians. The second place Paul takes us in these opening words of the New Testament is to the affirmation of faith being a verb. Christianity is not a philosophy. It's not at heart a dogma. It's not tenets or laws. Christianity is action. It's a way of life. Paul commends the Thessalonians for their living faith. You see, this was a church that got it. This was a group of people who got it. They got it. They got what's important. Paul said to them, when the message we preached came to you, it wasn't just words. Something happened in you. The Holy Spirit put steel in your convictions. Your lives are echoing the Master's word, not only in the provinces, but all over the place. The news of your faith in God is out. We don't even have to say anything anymore. You are the message. Are we the message of God's good news today? Do our lives witness to the good news of God's love and grace that's given unconditionally to the world? It's faith in action. The third place Paul takes us in these opening words to the New Testament is to a place of joy. He recognizes the church of Thessalonica as being joyful people. Christianity is at heart a place of joy. Now we have to be careful with this concept, that we don't confuse it with that inauthentic concept that we are always to be happy. Do you know anybody that's always happy? They scare me to death. As Christians, we don't have to keep a phony smile plastered on our faces all the time. Now it's nice if we can smile once in a while. But we don't have to deny the reality of pain and trouble in our lives. Joy is one of those concepts hard to define in words. You just know it when you see it. Once in a while we see joy in a child playing with a 79-cent bottle of bubbles. Pure joy. Once in a while we see joy in a cancer patient surrounded by friends and family who's determined to make life not about the length of days, but about the quality of days. Once in a while we see joy in a new Christian who has just discovered that with Christ we can start all over again. We can have a clean slate. Once in a while, we see joy in a married couple who find reconciliation by going back to what brought them together in the first place, to the place where it all began, to that life that God offers us always starts in gratitude, in faith, as action, and in joy. I said just a moment ago that Paul teaches us that we are the message. Right? We carry the good news. I was proud this past week when I had opportunity to go to Duke Divinity School. Wow, that's an austere place, right? Beautiful campus. I was proud to be able to tell them who you are. I'm not sure every pastor is so proud to stand up and say, this is who my church is and what we do and how we treat one another and what we stand for. But I was proud. And I heard something there about how desperately our world needs to learn how to overcome our divisions. That is one of the most critical issues for us as a people right now, of all things. How do we overcome the divide? And as I thought about that, I thought, oh my goodness, we have the answer. Right here. Right? Not too many places in our world, even in our own community, where on a Sunday morning, in one room, gathered as the people of God, are those who look like us. Right? Do you know how special that is?
Yes.
I encourage you to do this from time to time, but look around you today. Go on. If you got to stand up to do it, do it. Look around. You, we are the message the world needs to hear. Let's pray. Thank you for our brother Paul, a man who was far from perfect. Talk about some dark stains in his past. Persecutor of Christians. But somehow you grabbed a hold of him, God, through the power of the message of Jesus. And his life was transformed, and he became the message. Thank you for delivering his message, that message through him to us today in these ancient words that are so fresh and relevant. Help us to remember what's most important. That is, that we ever have gratitude for all you've given us. That we practice our faith in our actions every day. And that we find and allow ourselves to live in a place of authentic joy. This is our prayer. In the name of Christ. Amen.